In Shulchan Aruch, the Machaber writes of Yosef Cairo regarding lighting Chanukah candles in synagogue, Madlikin umevarchim. You make you light umevarchim. Actually, you make the bracha first, perhaps, but Madlikin umevarchim. The point is, you make a bracha on lighting Chanukah candles in shul. And at first glance, it seems like an innocent statement. Why not? We light candles when we're home, so why shouldn't I light candles when I'm in shul? The potential issue with it is there's a fundamental difference between lighting Chanukah candles in shul and lighting Chanukah candles at home. Yeah. One is a mitzvah, one is not. The mitzvah, as clearly stated in the Gemara, is ner ish ubeso, that the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles is only in a bias at home. Either, if you're at someone else's home, that's a discussion. The guests chip in and they either light their own or they participate somehow. But you need a bias in order to be chayev in the Chanukah. And in our shuls today, certainly, no one lives in the shuls. It's not like we're lighting for people who live in the shul. So the question is, what is the Machaber? So why is the Machaber right that you make a bracha on Hanukas Neras Chanukah? If it's not a mitzvah, it's only a minhag, it's only a custom. But of course, you ask me, who says we don't make a bracha on a minhag? That's a general question. In other words, on a mitzvah minat Torah, before we do a mitzvah minat Torah, we make a bracha. And certain exceptions, we make a bracha afterwards, like by someone's converting, so you have to make it after. And even on rabbinical mitzvahs, we make brachas. In fact, the source of that is Chanukah. The Gemara says, how could you say, Asher Kiddushanu Mitzosa B'tzivanu? God didn't command me, the rabbis did. So that is based on the pasuk we read in Parashat Shoftim, V'osasa min hadavar asher yagidu lecha yamino small. You don't turn away from the chachamim when they tell you right is left is right, etc. They quote a verse in the Chumash. So we have mitzvahs minat Torah, mitzvahs midrabanan. What about making brachas on minhagim? So that seems to be a dispute, an earlier dispute, but the bottom line dispute seems to be between Ashkenaz and Sfard. The minhag Ashkenaz seems to be yes. The minhag Sfard seems to be no. As a general rule, the Rabbi Yosef Cairo was more strict on brachas because if he's consistent with his view, he feels a blessing in vain might be a biblical prohibition. So if you think a blessing in vain is a biblical prohibition, not a rabbinical one, so then you're going to be more strict. So in general, that's why the opinion of the Sfardim is, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, that let's say we know Nashim Peturus mi mitzvahs aseh shazman grama. Women are exempt from time-bound positive commandments, i.e., eating mat. No, mat is actually an exception. No. But lulav, sitting in the sukkah, etc. So it's clear they're exempt. Are they allowed to do it? So it's a dispute in the Gemara. One opinion is they're not allowed to do it. It's adding to the Torah, but we don't follow that opinion. We assume not only are they allowed, it's praiseworthy for women to volunteer mitzvahs aseh. There's a discussion, maybe talis and tefillin, they shouldn't be volunteering. That's a separate issue. But in general rule, a general mitzvah aseh shazman, women volunteer. So could they make a bracha when they volunteer? So that's a machlokas rishonim, basically a dispute between Ashkenaz and Sfard. Ashkenaz says yes, volunteer even with a bracha, and Sfardi say no bracha. Well, why does Sfardim say no bracha? So at first glance they seem correct, because they say, how could a woman make a bracha? What are you saying in the bracha?
Because it's the same story.
Asher Kiddushanu B'tzivanu. I'm not commanded, I'm volunteering.
Right.
And we assume Ashkenaz is going on the generic. The woman's not saying they're commanded. So the Jewish people are commanded.
And it's a double no-no if the mitzvah was rabbinic instead of.
We assume right. It's a separate right. It's Zman Gram and Midrabanan, right? That might be exempt from right. two negatives don't equal a positive here.
No.
Right. So therefore, that's in general. The Sephardim don't make brachas. We do.
Right.
So what about saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh? According to everybody, that is only a minhag, and that's why we only say Chatzi Hallel. We only say a half Hallel. So legally speaking, it's not even a Hallel. We do Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. In fact, because the Gemara gives an example. I think Rav went to Bavel somewhere. He went to this place, or one of the rabbis, and it was Rosh Chodesh, and they started saying Hallel. And the guy, this rabbi thought they were nuts until they only said Chatzi. He said, okay, I see it's only a custom here. Obviously in different places there was no custom. So do we make a bracha on Hallel and Rosh Chodesh?
In the art scroll, the first parak of Hallel is the bracha.
Right. So it depends if you're Ashkenaz or Sfard. In Sfard you always have different opinions, but the classical opinion in the Machaber is no bracha.
Yeah.
No bracha on Hallel and Rosh Chodesh. Ashkenaz do. So we see Ashkenaz make brachas on Minhagim, but Sfardim don't, and therefore no bracha on Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. So the Chacham Tzvi has the famous question. There's an apparent contradiction in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Machaber. What's the apparent contradiction? Because the Machaber paskins no bracha on Chatzi Hallel or Rosh Chodesh because it's only a minhag. And yet the Machaber paskins, as we began the class in Hilchas Chanukah, madlikim umevarchim beveis hakneses. We make a bracha on the candle lighting in shul, and there's no dispute. According to everybody, that is only a minhag. So how do we reconcile the Machaber who says in Hallel no bracha on Chatzi Hallel, which is a minhag, yet when it comes to Hallel, when it comes to Neiros Chanukah in shul, he says you do. So there are many answers. That's a separate share in its own right. We'll just focus on one answer right now, and that's from Rav Yaakov Emden, one of the great independent thinkers. He writes as follows in the Mor Ketzia. Generally speaking, as we know, brachas are only d'Rabbanan. There are only two biblical brachas, one definite one, benching, and then Birkas HaTorah is a discussion, the bracha we make in the morning, not when we get called up for the Torah, in Birkas HaShachar. So generally speaking, 95% plus are all rabbinical brachas. So, and generally speaking as well, let's say we put on talis this morning, we put on tefillin this morning, and we forgot to make the bracha. Because you got to make the bracha and you're still wearing your tefillin, you're still wearing your talis, so that's a mitzvah nibsheches, it's a continuous mitzvah, so then perhaps you could still make the bracha. What happens if you already finished for the day? You remembered after the mitzvah is over, or you took it off. So in general, we don't make a bracha acha gmar mitzvasa. It's a machlokas the Rambam or Zeru and Hilchas Shchita. We don't. Okay. So what happens if you did make a bracha, you forgot, now you finished? Do you still get credit for the mitzvah, or do you have to do it over again? If I put on my tefillin this morning and did make a bracha, do I have to go back now and put on my tefillin? So no. We all know, brachas eina makvas. Brachas are, in 99% of the time, are not an obstacle in performing a mitzvah. And either, some say because brachas are only d'Rabbanan, while tefillin is d'Oraisa, so it's not, whatever the reason is, it's not. Comes along Rabbi Yaakov and says, however, there's an exception. Like every rule, there's an exception. He says, Ner Chanukah is an exception to the rule. That normally, you always have to make a bracha, but if you don't make a bracha, it's okay. By Ner Chanukah, he says, the bracha is inherent, integral to the mitzvah. Why is Ner... What?
No bracha, no mitzvah.
Yeah, why is Ner Chanukah different according to Rabbi Yaakov Emden? So he points out is because by Ner Chanukah, it's one of the few mitzvahs that involve Pirsumei Nisa. It's a mitzvah which one of the inherent purpose of the mitzvah is to publicize the miracle. back in the Talmud, we put the candles outside, and now we do it inside. But part of the mitzvah is we shouldn't be doing it by itself. We should be doing it to publicize the miracle. In fact, interesting historical statement by one of the commentators. When we move from outside to inside, we used to light candles outside, and we moved them inside. So that's when the custom of lighting in the synagogue came about, because you want presumably the more people ensure that in your home, so we did it that way. So they point out as follows: it says, since the whole purpose of lighting Chanukah candles is to publicize the miracle, how do I know if someone's lighting Chanukah candles because they want to read a book now, they want to light in the house, or they're doing it for the mitzvah? So we have different halachas where it can't be too close to the ground or too high. But Rebbe says that's why the bracha was instituted. When you make a bracha, that indicates you're doing it for the purpose of Chanukah. So Rabbi Yaakov Enden says Chanukah is an exception, no bracha, no mitzvah. And he says that's the answer. He says the question is, do we make a bracha on a minhag or not? The Machaber by Hallel Rosh Chodesh says no bracha when you say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, a half a Hallel. According to us, it's not a question. We make a bracha on both. According to the Sfardim, no bracha on Chatzi Hallel. So how come they make a bracha on Chanukah candles in the Beis HaKnesses? So that's the answer. The answer is for a minhag, no. But since this involves the mitzvah for assuming needs, so we're not saying, you know what, there's a custom of lighting Chanukah candles in shul. Okay. Now next step, okay, well I'm doing it now, let me make a bracha. That's not part and parcel of the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is making a bracha. So even though normally you wouldn't make a bracha by a minhag, since this is inherent to the mitzvah, therefore madlikin u'mevarachin beveis hakneses. Okay, so the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, mitzvasa mishatishka hachama achetichla regel min hashuk. The Gemara tells us the Zman Hanuka for Hanukas Neiros Chanukah. So it gives us the beginning time, and we'll see perhaps the end time. But let's start off with Mitzvah Misha Tishka Hachama. So what does Misha Tishka Hachama mean? When is the earliest time to light Chanukah candles? L'chadchila. So the Rambam, and this is the Vilna Gaon Shita, and many briskers follow it. Misha Tishka Chama means Shkia. The way we know it is Shkia, sunset. So let's say sunset is 5 o'clock, you should start lighting candles at 5 o'clock. See, people think it's not a kula, it's a chumrah. What do I mean? It's not a kula, it's a chumrah. Everyone still agrees the candles or the oil have to light to a half an hour after Seitz. That's not debatable. The issue is, so according to the Rambam Briskers, you can never use the regular Chanukah candles. You have to use Shabbos candles, oil, because those you'll never make it. So that's how some Rishonim learn Misha Tishka Chama means Shkia. And other Rishonim, the Mordechai, others, they say it doesn't say Shkia Chama. It says Misha Tishka Chama, that's so Shkia. That's the end of Shkia. And therefore you can't light candles until Seitz HaChochavim. We know there's a general machlokas between the Vilna Gaon and Rabbeinu Tam. I mean, not just them, but those are the two famous ones, who they call it the Gruz Shita and they call it Rabbeinu Tam Shita. And it's actually not just Rabbeinu Tam, it's like Rov Rishonim. And when is Shkia? Well, everyone knows when the sun physically sets. So the Vilna Gaon sheet is what we call sunset is Shkia. And then he says 13 and a half minutes after sunset, for the next 13 and a half minutes, that's Ben Hashmashas. And then after that, then that's Seitz HaChochavim. So the Vilna Gaon sheet, it was 13 and a half minutes after sunset, that's Seitz. That's in Eretz Yisrael. So they point out, and the Rabbeinu Tam holds totally different. Rabbeinu Tam holds, see, it's how you learn. There's a Gemara in Psachim and a Gemara in Shabbos. How long is Ben Hashmashas? So one Gemara says it's the time it takes to walk 4 mil. What's called a Persian mile, 4 miles. That's where 4 times 18, you get 72 from. Another Gemara says 3/4 of a mil. So, how you reconcile the two Gemaras are the key. But obviously, so the Vilna Gaon says, he learns it at 3/4 of a mil, 3/4 of 18, 13 and a half. And the fourth state is at 5:18 an hour, 5:13 and a half. And Rabbi Tam, using the 5 o'clock example with the sunset, according to Rabbi Tam, it's still Vadayom. It's called Shkia Rishona, but there's no real halachic significance. And it goes until 58 and a half minutes after we call sunset. In other words, he says you do 4 mil minus 3/4 of a mil, and therefore you get 58 and a half minutes. In other words, the time between sunset is a third. Everyone agrees apparently that Ben Hashmashas is 13 and a half minutes. The question is, where is the 13 and a half minutes? Is it from 5 to 5:13 and a half according to the Gra, or Rabbi Notam, it's 5:58 to 6:12, whatever the time period. So that's a machlokas in general. So the Rambam and the Gra, the Briskers go with Shkia, and this isn't limited to here. That's a general machlokas when the Gemara, like the Gemara talks about in Tainus. Call Tainus, shelo shaka hachama, doesn't have a shame Tainus. Any Tainus, you don't make it until, so what's Shkia? So that's again another machlokas Rishonim. Some say it means Shkia, and others say it means Tzeit. So in general, we have a machlokas on what it means. Sof Shkia, Tequila Shkia. So either way, the Rambam writes you light at Shkia, and Rabbi Notam says you don't light until, let's say, assuming he holds, according to Rabbi Notam, if it's Misha Tishka Chama, if Rabbi Notam goes with the sheet to the you light at Shkia, you'd be lighting at 5:58 and a half. That would be the equivalent of the Vilna Gaon's 5. So either way, those are the two sheetas, the two basic sheetas, whether you light at, of course you could have a discussion when the times are, but the Rambam and the Gra, it begins at Shkia, and according to Rabbi Notam, the Mordechai, other Rishonim, it begins at Seitach Chochavim. So what do we do, Lamaisa? Lamaisa is a different minhagim. Some people are machmir and they light at Shkia, and I said it's a chumrah because they have to have a lot of oil. In fact, I think the Brisker Rav himself, they say, what do you mean, but today people are in the street till 8 hours of the day. So they say over, the Brisker Rav, I guess he lived in Yerushalayim near a movie theater. I don't think he went into the movie theater, at least not to watch a movie, but he used to tell people, find out when the last feature is, and when after the people come home from the last feature, that's all you need. In other words, in terms of it's just the mitzvah, so apparently, he's probably saying a l'chumra, not make a adin, but then you should have, it's ideal to do the Persumi Nisa as long as there are people around. So what do we do? So again, it's a different minhagim. Moshe Feinstein has a middle approach. He says that the different sheets, when we look at our calendar, we see Shabbos is over 8:25, Shabbos is over 7:15. So people think that's it. It's like an exact number, not that it's not, it's an exact number according to that shita, but obviously the calendar is working with the shita, whatever. You have to know what the shita on Shki is, on Seitz, and they come up with the number, and the number is valid. I'm not saying you shouldn't follow it, but it's not like carved in stone, this is the number. It doesn't mean if you did something 2 minutes before, you could be another shita, maybe 5 minutes before, depending on what we're talking about. So Rav Moshe talks about it, he says, since we have a principle, Savik Daraisa L'chumra, Savik D'Rabbanan L'Kula, and since when it comes to Ben Hashmashos and or Seitz HaChochavim, the different shitas when actually it is. So he says Savek Rabbanim L'Kula. We don't have to be the most machmer. He says in New York City, and it's probably not much different here. He says he thinks 20 to 25 minutes after Shkia, one can already light the Chanukah candles because you have shitas already that say it's safe. So since it's only a din d'Rabbanan, we don't have to be machmer like Shabbos, Yom Kippur, and wait the 72 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever you normally wait on a Shabbos. On dinim d'Rabbanan, we could be lenient, and that's how some have it say also by Sfiras HaOmer. There's a general machlokas today whether Sfiras HaOmer Mizmana says D'Oraisa D'Rabbanan. So assuming it's D'Rabbanan, even if it's not D'Rabbanan, there's a discussion when do you start counting. The Tosfos writes you should begin at Shkia because the Tamimus, you want to get a full Tamimus, and we don't paskin that way. We paskin you begin at Seit. Again, so therefore, so what's Seit? So then you have different shitas, exactly what, big gamut, when is Seit Tzachochavim. So Rav Moshe writes, since he paskin Sfiras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan today, so therefore you can take the 20, 25 minutes, I guess it depends what time of the year it is, it's based, I think it's the Gros Seits they're working with, but it's not the Gros Seits I think in Eretz Yisrael is 13 and a half minutes. It's not 13 and a half minutes here, but it's a lot shorter than Rabbeinu Tam's. That's the Vilna Gaon's Taina on the Rabbeinu Tam, or the Kasha. Hachush Machish. He says, what are you talking about? It gets darker way before your 72 minutes. So what are you telling me? It's, and then it depends where you see 3 stars. Where, there's a whole discussion of Ben Hashmashos on it. But Rav Moshe writes it by Chanukah, and other poets can write it by Sfiras HaOmer. So if you're not sure about the Zman, so on a din d'Rabbanan, you can do it early. That's when we get into Sov Zman Tainis. And Asar B'Tevis is coming up, I guess, in another month or so. When we get into that, when does the fast end? So that's a whole discussion. Like on many calendars, what they have is, on many calendars they have the same time. Whenever Shabbos is over, they put the fast, obviously within different, but what I mean is they'd go with the same time Shabbos is over. And other calendars you see there are different times. Like the calendar here will probably be much earlier, and that's because they're working with the Vilna Gaon states, and based on many factors about what's the size of the fast day today, etc. But that's what it depends on. So those are the different shitas. When you say mitzvah tishkar chama, what does shkiyat chama mean? So then therefore the Rambam writes one has to light at shkia, as we'll see. You can't as not lighting before. That's the first part of the Gemara, and then the Gemara says hashetichla regla min hashuk. So the Gemara has a whole discussion. What's it coming to teach me? Because the Gemara is in the middle of the sugya of whether kavsa zakik. Excuse me. It's part of the whole sugya whether kavsa zakik or kavsa ain't zakik. If the candle goes out, do you have to relight it or not? So in the sugya, they're trying to bring rayas both. So it says it quotes this brisa. So what's this coming to tell me? That why are you telling me the mitzvah is tishkat chamash ilav? It must be the ilo madulek. So one opinion is coming to teach me that if I haven't lit yet, as long as it's still before I should tichel regam and ashuk, I could still light. Telling me the zman hadulaka, or inami l'sheure. No, nothing to do with what time you have to light. It's when you do light, how long does the candle have to go for? That's a discussion in the Gemara. So the Gemara bottom line says hashetichel regam and ashuk. So as we said, that depends. Today hashetichel regam and ashuk could be later because people, if you live in Manhattan, it could be one time. It depends where you are and everything. So what happened? Let's say Bizman HaGemara. Bizman HaGemara. you missed it's achar tichel regel min hashuk. So what do? In Bisman, I'm talking about Zman HaGemara, it's no longer tichel regel min hashuk anymore. So what do? So the Rambam writes, that's it, it's over. You lost your chance for doing the mitzvah. At least you'll cash it the second night, the third night. They're not dependent on one another like Svira is perhaps. So therefore he says that's it. Once you miss Tichel Regel no Shuk, you can't light anymore. Again, I'm not talking about Bisman Hazeh. I'm talking about Bisman HaGemara. And the Rashba lights, if you miss it, then light afterwards. In other words, according to the Rambam, you can't light after Tichel Regel min hashuk. According to the Rashba, yeah, lechatchila you light before, but b'diavad you have even after Tichel Regel min hashuk. And Tosfos over there in Shabbos Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, he's mesupik. He's not sure. He says Bisman HaGemara. He says Bisman HaZeh, he writes already might be different. Even Tosfos alludes to that. But he says Bisman HaGemara, it seems to be depending on this 2 days in the Gemara. If you say the Gemara is teaching me Zman Hadulacha Mitzvah Mishatishcha Chama Tichel Regel min hashuk, then it could be it's over. That seems to be how the Rambam learns the Gemara. But the Rashba seems to this telling me Shurei. It's not limited to Tichel Regel min hashuk. That's the way the technical reading. What's the Lamdish or Machlokas? What's the issue between the Rambam and the Rashba? Whether you can light Chanukah candle with Zman HaGemara Achash Tichel Regel min hashuk. So the Rambam apparently holds. The question is, we know there's a mitzvah, there's a Maisa Hadlaka. We have a mitzvah midrabanan of Ner Chanukah to light the candles every night. That's one mitzvah. And then we have another concept on Chanukah called Persume Nisa. We have a mitzvah to light Chanukah candles in a way that it's going to publicize the miracle. So the question is, are they one thing or two things? Is Persume Nisa inherent to the Maisa Hadlaka? In other words, could you do a Maisa Hadlaka without Persume Nisa? Do they go hand in hand? Or no? L'chatchila they should go together, but b'diavad you could still have a concept of a Maisa Hadlaka, even though this specific Maisa Hadlaka doesn't have Persume Nisa. Like we have something similar, totally different, but a similar concept. We had a Machokas there by Avelis, the Rambam versus the Rush. Could you have Nihugei Avelis without Shiva? Everyone agrees Shiva doesn't begin until the Kfura. But could you have a concept of Avelis? The Rambam says no. You can't have a concept of Avelis if it's not being Olu in Shiva. And the Rush disagrees. So what do we say here? Can you have Persume? Could you have a Maisa Hadlaka without Persume? The assumption is Bisman HaGemara Achash Tichel Regel min hashuk. There is no more Persume Nisa. So the Rambam says no. Clearly he thinks they go hanuka, they go together. And the Rashba disagrees. The Mishnah says in Megillah, I think Tavchav, that when you have a mitzvah kol yom, it's kosher kol yom. When you have a mitzvah of a layla, it's kosher kol halayla. So who says that's a tichel regel min hashuk? That's a lechatchila din. You want to do it, behiddur. But of course, the mitzvah of Chanukah candles is all night. So that's the machokas. That seems to be the nekudas hamachokas between the Rambam and the Rashba, whether Persume Nisa is inherent to the Maisa Hadlaka or not. And the machokas Rambam and Rashba seems to be the suffix of Tosfos. Tosfos is mesupik. He's not sure if you came back and it's Acha Tichel Regel min hashuk, should you light? So he writes, you should light without a bracha because he's mesupik about it. So the suffix of Tosfos seems to be the machokas, the Rashba, and the Rambam. As I'm saying, Bisman HaZeh, it's a different shaila because we light inside, so we might have Persume Nisa all the time. Maybe, as Tosfos suggests, the mitzvahs change for the different people. So we have three shitas. We have the shita of the Rambam that says once you miss Tichel Regel min hashuk, it's over. You have the shita of the Rashba, it's kosher kol halayla, and you have the shita of the Bali Tosfos, who's mesupik so according to the Rambam, you don't light at all. According to Tosas, you light without a bracha, and according to the Rashba, you light with a bracha. And that's what, in fact, even the poskim talk about, let's say, the equivalent, Bizman Hazeh. Let's say you come back at 2, 3 in the morning, and no one's up, no one's around. So some poskim say, wake up someone. I don't necessarily recommend it, and definitely not your parents. So this is, so Rav Aaron Salvation, other poskim say it's okay, you can make a bracha. I think the lush of the Mishnah Brewer is Mevarach Eino Mafsid, something like that. You don't lose by making. In other words, he's saying it's okay. That seems to be our minhag, that we light a bracha when we light, and that seems to be, not that we pass on Rav Yaakov Emden, but that's Rav Yaakov Emden's shita. That normally the bracha isn't miyakiv in the mitzvah. If I put on tefillin without the bracha, I get the mitzvah. If I do most mitzvahs without the brachas, I get the mitzvah. Rav Yaakov Emden is mecharesh by near Chanukah. You have to make a bracha because Persumei Nisa is inherent to the mitzvah. Not only, how does anyone know if I have a light in my house, maybe I'm doing with tzarach atzmo? That's why the different laws of Chanukah can't be too low, it can't be too high. So that's what the Rav Yaakov Emden writes. That's why we have a chiyuv bracha. That's part of the mitzvah Persumei Nisa. We don't pass and say, but that's why Rav Yaakov Emden says anytime you light, you have to make a bracha because that's part inherent of the mitzvah. He just takes Rambam, a step further, and he says, and hence anytime you lie, you have. I'm not saying the Rambam himself holds that way, but that's Rabbi Yaakov Emden. So those are 3 shitas Bizman HaGemara. Do we have the Machokes? Visha Tishka Chama? Do we light at Shkia, Seitz, or somewhere in between, like Rav Moshe? And then we had Shatikha Regel Min Hashuk. We had the Rambam. It's over. Rashba you have all night, and Tosas is Mesupik. We'll continue next time, and perhaps we'll get a 4th shita. How could there be a 4th shita? 4th shita, Bizman HaGemara. What do you do if you come home and it's Acha Ticha Regel Min Hashuk? The Gemara tells us in Shabbos, Ba mitzvah la'anicha, there's a mitzvah to light near Chanukah outside Pesach Beso. You should be surrounded by mitzvahs, mezuzah on one side, and near Chanukah on the other side. So the question is, Bizman HaGemara, how late could you light near Chanukah? So the Gemara tells us, Hasheticha Regel Min Hashuk, until the last person leaves the shuk. So again, Bizman Hazeh, it's a different question, but Bizman HaGemara, when is the last time you could light candles? So l'chatchila anyway, Hasheticha Regel Min Hashuk. The question is, what happens if you miss Ticha Regel Min Hashuk? Are there any options? So the Rambam writes, no. Once you miss Ticha Regel Min Hashuk, you cannot light anymore. And the Rashba says, what do you mean? The Mishnah says in Megillah, any mitzvah at night is a mitzvah kol halayla. So what do you mean you can't light? Of course you can light. It's not ideal. The optimal time is to do it together with Persumei Nisa. But if not, you still have a mitzvah. You have a mitzvah of a Maisa Hanuka. So it's a fundamental machlokas, the Rashba and the Rambam, can I light Bizman HaGemara Achat Sheticha Regel Min Hashuk. And Tosas in Shabbos, Chaf Aleph seems to be mesupik about it. He writes, based on the 2 days in the Gemara, when you say kavsa, regarding the Gemara's question, if the candle goes out, you have to relight it. So the Gemara says, what is it coming to tell me? Mitzvasa mishatishkar chama sheticha regel min hashuk. Is it telling me the zman hanuka, or is it telling me how long the candle has to be lit for? So 2 days in the Gemara Tosas says, and therefore he's mesupik, he's not sure which one is the ikar, and therefore he says, light without a bracha. So you have 3 shitas in the Rishonim, the Rambam versus the Rashba, and the Tosas is mesupik. What is the issue? What is the suffix of Tosas, and what is the machlokas, the Rashba and the Rambam? Is can you separate Persumei Nisa from Ner Chanukah? Is it possible that you could light Ner Chanukah and not have Persumei Nisa? So the Rambam says no. The hanuka, they go together. Every time you light Ner Chanukah, there's no such thing as a Maisa hanuka without Ner Chanukah. It's not Ner Chanukah then. Kind of like Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the more Katzia writes, we don't patskin this way, but he holds the brachas, even though normally brachas are not an obstacle in performing the mitzvah. But over here he says, brachas are ma'akeh because the bracha shows it makes it recognizable you are doing Persumei Nisa, you are publicizing the miracle, and therefore the brachas are likuba. So the Rambam writes, not that he says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, it's a bigger chiddush, but the Rambam, this is the first part that seems to be Persumei Nisa go hand in hand with the Ma'aseh Haruka. And the Rashba says the two different things. It's the Ma'aseh Haruka, and Chazal said the optimal way is to light candles when you have a Persumei Nisa. But if you find a Heichet Timsa, Achash Tichel Regam and Ashok, where you can have a Ma'aseh Haruka without Persumei Nisa, of course you still have a chiyuv to light Chanukah candles. And therefore the Rashba says most definitely you light after, even if there's no one on the street. And Tosfos is Masupik, he says you light without a bracha. Those are the three shitas. There's actually a fourth shita. The Sefer HaTrumas. The Sefer HaTrumas writes that you know what you do? If it's Achat Tichareg when I shook Bizman HaGamara, you light inside your house. So Sefer HaTrumas is being Machadesh that lighting inside your house was always okay. It's not the ideal way because outside there are more people, you do Persumei Nisa, but fundamentally there was nothing wrong with lighting inside your house. It was just more of a preferable way. It all goes back to how you learned the Gemara, Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, the same daf, same Amud, when the Gemara says, what do you do b'shas ha-sakana? The Gemara says, during a time of danger, meiniach al shulchano v'dai. It's enough to put it on your table. So what is the Gemara saying here? Is the Gemara being machadesh, a new halacha, a big chiddush? You know what? It's usually usher to light inside, but b'shas sakana, we made a new takana d'Rabbanan that you can light inside. Well, no, Sefer HaTrumas says no, that's not the pshat. It's an observation. During the time of danger, they actually lit inside, but you could always light inside. It's just always better to light outside. So Tosfos seems to be cholek with the Sefer HaTrumas because Tosfos writes at the end, Ubizman hazeh, you light inside, so therefore it's different, implying that Bizman HaGamara you couldn't light inside. So it seems to be a machlokas, the Sefer HaTrumas versus the Bali Tosfos, whether one was permitted to light inside your house Bizman HaGamara, even if it wasn't Shas HaSakana. So Torah Sefer HaTrumas says yes, and that's what you do. Achash Aticha Regam and Ashok. Tosfos doesn't look at it as an option. He says you have to light without a bracha. So this machlokas in the Rishonim between the Sefer HaTrumas and the Bali Tosfos also seems to be a machlokas among the Gedolei Achronim, among the great Achronim, the Magen Avram and the Vilna Gaon, in terms of this issue. Where does it come up? It comes up in a different area. The Mechaber brings down in Shulchan Aruch, Asur l'shtamesh, you're not allowed to get benefit from Ner Chanukah. The Gemara talks about counting change, counting money. It's a bizoy mitzvah. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins, Asur l'shtamesh, you can't use Ner Chanukah for your own personal benefit. In contrast to Ner Shabbos, the whole reason we light Ner Shabbos is for benefit, is l'or. But Ner Chanukah is dafka Persumei Nisa, and that's why we dafka light it in a certain way, a certain level off the ground, not too high, in order to make sure that we know we're doing it for Persumei Nisa, not for our own benefit. So that's what that's the halacha. So comes along the Machaber and he adds a chiddush, something not in the Gemara. Afilu tashmishay mitzvah, even for mitzvah purposes, one cannot use Ner Chanukah. So the question the Achronim ask on the Machaber, how does he know that? The Gemara doesn't say that. Where's the source of the Mechaber that you can't even get Hana from near Chanukah, even if it's for mitzvah purposes? So the Vilna Gaon suggests, he says the Gra got it from an explicit Gemara. Well, it's an explicit Gemara according to the Gra. According to us, it's not an explicit Gemara, but it might be an implied one if you learn the Gemara like the Gra. What Gemara are we referring to? There's a Gemara also in Shabbos a couple of dafim later. Chav Gimel, Chav Daled. The Gemara talks about, it's not a 21st century Shaila, not in North America, that someone is afflicted with poverty. We have people afflicted with poverty, unfortunately, but also the poverty today isn't necessarily the same as it was then. And the Gemara wants to know, if you have only enough money, you have to make choices in life. Choosing good from bad intellectually is an easy choice. It might be hard to do in reality, but it's an easy choice. Choosing good from good, that's much harder. So if I have to choose between an Aveira and a mitzvah, it's easy. But if I have to choose between different mitzvahs, so then I have to go into it more. So the commentators point out that let's say you only have, the Gemara points out, if you only have enough money for Ner Shabbos, candles for Shabbos, Ner Chanukah, candles for Chanukah, or Kiddush al Yayin, wine for Kiddush, what is the order? So the Gemara says, Pshita, Ner Shabbos Adaf. It's Pasha, the Ner Shabbos comes first because of Shalom Bayis, the all-important principle of peace of household. Secondly, the Gemara says, Ner Chanukah second, Persume Nisa. Number 3, on the bottom of the list is wine for Kiddush. That has Tadir, V'she'eno Tadir, Tadir Kodem. If something happens more frequently and something happens less frequently, the more frequent one wins. So that's what wine for Kiddush has. So the question is, and the Gemara, and then the Rishonim discuss when do you apply each of the principles. When is Persume Nisa Adef, and when do you apply the principle of Tadir. But the bottom line is the Gemara says Ner Shabbos wins, and then Ner Chanukah second, and wine for Kiddush. So therefore, if you only have enough money for one, the Gemara says clearly Pshita Ner Shabbos, Shalom Bayis. So the Vilna Gaon and the Magen Avraham asked to give two different answers, the same Shaila. Why didn't the Gemara make a simple suggestion? What is the simple suggestion? Use one candle for both. Why you have one candle, so let it have a dual role, near Shabbos and near Chanukah. Why doesn't the Gemara suggest that possibility? So comes along the Vilna Gaon and says, you know why it doesn't suggest that possibility? Because asa l'shtamish la'ora. I feel a mitzvah that the Mechaber writes you can't even get Hana from the Chanukah candles even with bar mitzvah. And how does the Mechaber know from this Gemara? The reason why the Gemara doesn't suggest using the same candle for Shabbos and Chanukah candles is because it's also because if you use it for Chanukah candles you can't get benefit from it. So what do we see from the Vilna Gaon? That's the source of the Mechaber. And comes along the Magen Avraham and says, no, we have a much more simple answer. We have to come on to the Vilna Gaon's answer. The Magen Avraham says that it's a problem because near Shabbos you light inside. Near Chanukah you light outside. So how could you fulfill both mitzvahs? How could you light one candle? One put it in the middle somewhere, like either it's going to be inside or outside. So if you put it inside, that's near Shabbos. If you put it outside, near Chanukah, it's not possible for one candle. That's what the Gemara didn't suggest, because it's impossible. So what do we see according to the Magen Avraham? that lighting inside Bizman HaGemara was not an option. In contrast, the Vilna Gaon doesn't give that answer. He gives another answer implying it's possible that you really, Bizman HaGemara, you can light near Chanukah inside. So this machlokas, the Vilna Gaon and the Machaber, the Vilna Gaon and the Magen Avram, on why the Gemara did not say use one candle for both, either according to the Grug, it's a source of the Machaber that you can't get enough on the candles even for mitzvah purposes. Is that the reason? Or it's for other purposes? As they point out, like the Magen Avram, it's because it was two different places. So this machokas, the Magen Avram and the Gruz, seems to be the machokas, the Sefer Chumas versus the Balitosis. Whether Bizman HaGemara, it was shaykh to light inside. So the Vilna Gaon seems to think it was, and the fact that he doesn't negate the question, the Magen Avram the question doesn't get off, and that's so the Vilna Gaon seems to go with the Sefer Chumis, and the Magen Avram seems to go with the Bali Tosfos in terms of this issue. And Lamaisa, the Magen Avram doesn't really give us much direction in terms of how do we do it. Like he doesn't get into, do we make two brachas? Like what do we do when we use? Now of course he agrees also l'shtam mishal oram even mitzvah, but he says you have no choice here. What are you going to do? Better to do the mitzvah of near Shabbos and near Chanukah, and don't do Nelechatchila. I just want to point out, Bizman Hazeh, it shouldn't be a question. Bizman Hazeh, it shouldn't be a question anyway, because we paskin, and it's a discussion among the poskim. The poskim today basically agree. I mean, it's a discussion regarding electric lights on Shabbos. Chanukah, we generally assume that you can't use electric lights for different reasons. You need the mikdash. It's consumed as generated, and different reasons why the poskim say electric isn't good. But electric lights, incandescent bowls, the consensus view is it is good by Shabbos, and therefore Bizman Hazeh wouldn't be an issue if we had this question. So you turn on the electric lights and you fulfill your mitzvah of near Shabbos. In fact, that's the Rav Soloveitchik says to do every week, because that's the Iker light, and the near is this Tosev Azor, and then you can use the one candle for near Chanukah. So this is the fundamental question. Bizman HaGemara Acha Ticha Regel Min HaShuk, or Bizman HaGemara, were you permitted to light inside? So the Sefer Truma says yes, Tosas says no. It seems to be a machokas. The Magen Avram seems to go with Tosas, and the Vilna Gaon seems to go with the Sefer Trumas, based on how they answer the questions. And Bizman Hazeh, this wouldn't be a question, because since we have electric now, and therefore we could use the electric lights for Shabbos and use the candle or oil for Chanukah.